January 16th, 2026, 10:47 a.m. Beijing time. While you were scrolling through your phone, while Donald Trump was sleeping in Mar-a-Lago, while America was distracted by the latest TikTok drama, something catastrophic just happened to American power. A handshake in Beijing, a signature on a document, and just like that, 80 years of North American dominance started crumbling. I'm not being dramatic. I'm going to show you the exact numbers, the timeline they're desperately trying to hide, and why what happened in that room in China's Great Hall of the People is the beginning of the end of the American empire. Most people will scroll past this. Most people will never connect these dots. But you're not most people. You're here because you want the truth. So let's dive in. Here's what the mainstream media is telling you. Canada signs trade deal with China, agriculture and electric vehicles. Good for farmers. CNN called it routine bilateral cooperation. The New York Times buried it on page 14. Your government wants you to think this is boring. But let me tell you what actually happened in that room. Mark Carney, Canada's Prime Minister, just became the first G7 leader to publicly choose China over the United States. Not in secret, not behind closed doors, out in the open. And the deal he signed? This wasn't about canola and electric cars. This was a geopolitical earthquake. Pause for emphasis. Let me break down the real numbers for you, not the sanitized version they're feeding the public. $6.6 billion in immediate relief to Canadian farmers. Not millions, billions with a B, Chinese tariffs on Canadian canola. They were crushing farmers at 85%. Overnight, dropped to 15%. That's a $4 billion market that just reopened. Seafood, canola meal, pulses, all tariffs dropped to zero. Another $2.6 billion flowing to Western Canada. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. 49,000 Chinese electric vehicles flooding into Canada every single year. The tariff, it was 100%. Now, 6.1%. Think about what that means. Each EV worth about $35,000. That's $1.7 billion in Chinese vehicles entering North America annually. Lean in, lower voice. But the real bomb is buried in paragraph 47 of the official release. I bet you didn't read it. I bet your congressman didn't read it either. Canada sets an ambitious goal to increase exports to China by 50% by 2030. Let that sink in. Canada's trade with China in 2024 was $118.9 billion. A 50% increase means $178 billion by 2030. That's more than Canada's entire projected GDP growth for the next 4 years. Canada just bet its economic future on China instead of America. And here's the part that should terrify every American watching this. The media wants you to believe this came out of nowhere, just two friendly countries doing business. That's a lie. Let me show you the real timeline. The one that proves this was a coordinated attack on American influence. August 2025. China slaps a 76% tariff on Canadian canola. Devastates farmers. Billions in losses. But here's the key. Beijing keeps negotiation channels open. They're applying pressure, but leaving a door. October 2025. Mark Carney meets Xi Jinping at the APEC summit in South Korea. First official meeting since 2017. According to diplomatic sources I've reviewed, this is when Xi personally invites Carney to Beijing. They outline the framework for what just happened in January. November 2025, Trump releases his new national security strategy. It explicitly targets Canada as a security risk for importing Chinese technology. January 2nd, 2026, the U.S. Trade Representative announces they're reviewing USMCA specifically because of Chinese products coming through Canada. January 13th, 2026, Trump posts on Truth Social. Many people in Canada love being the 51st state. He's publicly threatening Canada again. January 16th, 2026. 48 hours later, Mark Carney is in Beijing signing this deal. Pause direct to camera. Do you see what happened here? China applied pain in August, offered relief in October, then sat back and let Trump create maximum political humiliation for Canada in January. And then, right when Canada was most angry at America, Beijing swooped in with the solution. This is a classic pincer move. China didn't win through military strength. They won through patience, while Trump did their work for them. Shift tone to reveal. But it gets worse. While everyone was watching the US-Canada drama, guess what else happened within 72 hours of this deal? Australia signed a $7.2 billion minerals deal with China. New Zealand announced a strengthened strategic partnership with Beijing. South Korea started semiconductor cooperation talks with China. This isn't about Canada. This is China's Five Eyes fracture strategy. The Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. The core of Western intelligence sharing since 1946. Australia, hedging. New Zealand, hedging. Canada, just went all in. That leaves the US and UK trying to hold the line. 2 out of 5. Serious, almost whisper. America thought they could isolate China. Instead, they're isolating themselves. Now let me show you the part that's going to hit your wallet. The part your government is praying you don't understand. This deal forces Canada to use Chinese yuan for portions of their trade. So what, you might say? It's just currency. No. This is how empires die. Listen carefully. To use yuan, Canada needs yuan reserves. To get yuan reserves, Canada sells US dollars and buys yuan. Every country that signs a deal like this chips away at dollar dominance, one agricultural contract at a time. And here's the genius of China's strategy. It's self-reinforcing. The more countries use yuan, the more they need yuan reserves. The more they need reserves, the more they trade with China. The more they trade with China, the more yuan gets used. It's a flywheel, and it's spinning faster every single quarter. Show the numbers. In Q4 2025, yuan-denominated trade hit 2.3 trillion globally. That's up 31% from the year before. If this rate continues, by 2028, yuan will represent 15 to 18% of global trade settlement. Let me be crystal clear about what that means. That's not rival to the dollar territory. That's the dollar's days are numbered territory. Lean in, serious. How long does China need to make this irreversible? Best estimates from economists I've studied. 3 to 5 years. We're 18 months into this transition. By 2028 to 2030, dollar dominance is functionally over. And when the dollar loses its reserve status, when foreign central banks start dumping US treasuries, here's what happens to you: inflation. When Britain's pound lost reserve status in the 1970s, they experienced 15% average inflation for a decade. Your $100,000 in savings? It'll buy $60,000 worth of goods in just 5 years. Interest rates. The US currently borrows at 4.5% because everyone needs dollars. Without that privilege, rates go to 7 to 9%. Your $400,000 mortgage goes from $2,200 per month to $3,100 per month. That's an extra $2,800 every year for 30 years. Jobs. Reserve currency status means cheap imports. Lose that, imports cost more. Companies cut costs. Retail. 16 million jobs at risk. Manufacturing. 12.8 million. Automotive. 1.7 million. Conservative estimate. 5 to 8% unemployment during the transition. Pause. Let it sink in. This isn't theory. This is math. And math doesn't care about your politics, your patriotism, or your feelings. Now, some of you are thinking, this is fear-mongering. America's too strong. This could never happen. Really? Let me show you the pattern, because this isn't the first time an American ally has openly hedged toward a rival power. 1956, Suez Crisis. The US refuses to support Britain and France, forces them to withdraw from Egypt. Result? France withdraws from NATO's Integrated Military Command by 1966. Time to fully play out? 10 years. 2016, Philippines under Duterte pivots toward China, declares separation from the US. Result? $24 billion in Chinese investment. US forced to accept reduced military access. Time to solidify? 4 years. 2026, Canada signs strategic partnership with China while calling Beijing more predictable than Washington. See the pattern? Each iteration happens faster. Suez took 10 years. Philippines took 4 years. Canada's pivot is happening in 18 months. The system is losing its ability to absorb these shocks. Show the decline numbers. Dollar's share of global reserves, 2000, 71%, 2010, 62%, 2020, 59%, 2026, 58%. That's a 13 percentage point loss in 26 years. At current acceleration rates, by 2035, it hits 45%. That's when the dollar mathematically loses reserve currency status. Build to crescendo. And here's the bitter irony that nobody wants to admit. The policies meant to save American dominance are accelerating its loss. Tariffs make US goods expensive. Countries trade with China instead. Sanctions force countries to build alternatives. Dollar usage decreases. Aggressive rhetoric makes allies nervous. They diversify reserves. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more desperate the empire acts, the faster it falls. Let me bring this all together for you. We started with what looked like a routine farming deal between Canada and China. It's actually the first G7 nation breaking ranks with US policy and publicly calling Beijing more predictable than Washington. This is part of a 20-year pattern of accelerating dollar decline and rising UN trade settlement. Based on current data, we're approximately 30–40% through this transition. The breaking point comes when the dollar's reserve share drops below 50%, or when a major economy announces non-dollar commodity pricing. Current trajectory says that happens between 2028 and 2030. That's 2 to 4 years from now. Pause. Lean in. Your life changes when inflation hits 10% plus, interest rates double, and import-dependent jobs disappear. The empire doesn't fall in a day. It falls in 1,000 cuts over a decade. We just watched Mark Carney in Beijing deliver cut number 247. Direct appeal to viewer. Now, I need to know, are you paying attention? Hit that subscribe button right now if this changed how you see what's happening to American power. Drop a comment and tell me. 1. Do you think the dollar survives past 2030? 2. Which scenario is most likely? Slow decline, sudden collapse, or managed transition? 3. Should the US retaliate against Canada or accept the new reality? I read every comment. The best discussions happen down there. Share this with someone who still thinks America's 5,525-mile border with Canada guarantees loyalty. Geography doesn't guarantee alliance anymore. Economics does. Final message. We're tracking what happens next. Trump's counter-move in February, whether those Chinese EVs actually reach Canadian driveways in June, and if Saudi Arabia announces UN oil sales, which would be the final nail in the dollar's coffin. Whichever breaks first, you'll see it here before CNN figures out what it means. Remember, this isn't partisan. This isn't left versus right. This is about understanding how power actually works. The dollar isn't American because America is special. It's American because of decisions made at Bretton Woods in 1944, maintained through petrodollar agreements in 1974, and enforced through sanctions and military bases. Those decisions are being unmade right now, not by votes, by market forces, strategic positioning, and accumulated leverage. You can't stop it by believing harder in American exceptionalism. You can only prepare for what comes next, and preparation starts with information. That's what this channel is for. End strong. Subscribe if you want to see clearly. Hit that notification bell if you want to see it first. This is how the game is actually played, and now you know.